You check your bank balance before you fall asleep. You calculate what you owe. You know exactly how much your time is worth per hour. But for almost all of ancient human history, none of that existed. No coins. No prices. No debt written on paper. And yet your ancestors traded, gave, and survived for over 100,000 years without ever inventing money. So what were they actually doing instead? The answer is stranger than you think. For decades, economists told a simple story. Before money, there was barter. You had fish, your neighbor had grain, so you swapped fish for grain. Money, they said, was just a more convenient version of that swap. Clean. Logical. Obvious. There's just one problem. It never happened that way. Anthropologist David Graeber spent years searching for a single documented society that actually ran on barter as its primary economy. He never found one. Not one. What he found instead was something far more human and far more interesting. Picture a small band of foragers, maybe 30 people, moving together across a landscape that could kill them in a dozen ways. No supermarkets. No safety net. No emergency fund. Just each other. In that world, keeping score was dangerous. If you gave someone meat today and demanded something equal in return tomorrow, you weren't building a relationship. You were building a transaction. And transactions end. Relationships don't. So instead, something else emerged. Anthropologists call it generalized reciprocity. You give without counting. You share without a ledger. Not because you're generous by nature, but because your survival depends on being owed nothing and owing nothing, while somehow everyone still helps everyone else. Confused yet? Good. So was every economist who first studied it. French sociologist Marcel Mauss spent years examining gift economies across the world, from Pacific Island communities to indigenous groups in North America. He noticed something almost every culture shared. A gift was never really free. It created a bond. An unspoken thread between giver and receiver that pulled them back toward each other again and again. Mauss called it the obligation to give, the obligation to receive, and the obligation to repay. Not with money. With memory. Think about what that means. In a world with no currency, your reputation was your currency. What people remembered about you determined whether you ate during a bad season, whether someone shared their fire, whether you were welcomed back into camp after weeks away hunting alone. Your brain still runs on this system, even now. Evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers built an entire theory around it. He called it reciprocal altruism, the idea that humans evolved to help others precisely because, over enough time, that help tends to circle back. Not through spreadsheets. Through instinct. You still feel a small twinge of guilt when someone helps you and you haven't helped them back. That twinge isn't random. It's ancient. It's the exact same mental circuitry your ancestors used to track who they owed. And who owed them, without ever writing a single number down. Here's where it gets stranger. If nobody was counting exact value, how did they know what was fair? They didn't, not in the way you think of fair. Fairness back then wasn't about equal exchange. It was about equal trust. Sharing wasn't a transaction between two individuals. It was glue holding together a group that could not survive alone. A hunter who brought down a large animal didn't hoard the meat. He couldn't. Meat spoils fast, storage didn't exist, and one person can't eat an entire elk before it rots. So he gave most of it away. But this wasn't pure kindness either. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins studied hunter-gatherer societies and described something he called the original affluent society. Not affluent in wealth, but in time. These groups often worked far fewer hours than modern humans do, because their economy wasn't built on accumulation. It was built on distribution. Hoarding food you couldn't finish made you look suspicious, even threatening. Sharing made you safe. Status wasn't measured in what you kept. It was measured in what you gave away, and who remembered that you gave it. Now think about what happens when a system like that meets something new. A stranger. Someone outside your band, with no shared history, no memory between you. This is where debt starts to look a little more like the debt you know today. Graeber pointed out that early record-keeping, the kind found on ancient clay tablets in Mesopotamia, wasn't actually about trading goods for goods. It was about tracking obligations between people, especially people who weren't close enough to simply trust each other's memory. When you know someone for your whole life, you don't need a receipt. When you don't, you start needing proof. That's the moment something shifts. Not when money appears, but when trust becomes too expensive to carry emotionally, and gets outsourced to a symbol instead. A mark. A tally. Eventually, a coin. So the real story isn't that money replaced barter. It's that money replaced memory. Every time you tap your card, you're using a tool built to solve a problem your ancestors solved with relationships instead. They didn't need currency. Because they had something currency was invented to imitate. Constant mutual dependence. A community small enough that everyone's reputation was public, permanent, and impossible to fake. You still feel the ghost of that system every single day. When you feel awkward letting a friend pay for your coffee without paying next time. When you remember, with strange precision, the one person who never pays you back. When a small favor from a stranger feels oddly moving, almost disproportionate to what it cost them. That's not modern etiquette. That's 50,000 years of social bookkeeping. Still quietly running in the background of your mind. Ancient humans didn't think about money the way you do, because to them, the real currency was never metal or paper. It was you. Your name. Your memory. Your willingness to show up for someone with nothing written down to prove it. And maybe that's the strangest part of all. The species that eventually invented the most complex financial systems on Earth first survived, for the overwhelming majority of its existence, on nothing but trust. So tonight, when you check your balance before falling asleep, remember what your ancestors were really counting. Not coins. Not debts. Each other.